So, 7:05, I'm going to call our meeting, Select Board meeting of Tuesday, March 24th to order. And first item is approval of the agenda.
So move. Take go out.
Moved and seconded. Are there any requested changes to the agenda? Kathleen, are you aware of any changes? No. So, not hearing any. All in favor of approving the agenda as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So next is approval of the minutes of our March 10th, 2020 Select Board meeting. Seek a motion to approve those minutes. Moved and seconded. Are there any amendments to the drafted minutes?
I had one thing about line 114. My question was, the way it's written now, it sounds like class 4 roads need to be gated. Is that correct? Or should it say could be gated, but need to remain unlocked? Right.
Can you hear?
Yes, she says that class 4 roads can be gated but not locked.
Okay.
Okay, so we could clarify that.
Heather? Did you have any changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Just thinking procedurally, when we're voting on something, how about a thumbs up so that I can tell who's voting?
Sounds good.
Okay, next is citizen comments, of which we do not have the capacity at this point, and nobody's here. Next is 2020 liquor license and outside consumption permit approvals. Town Clerk Ann Webster submitted 2 additional liquor license renewal applications for the board approval. One is from Otter Creek Brewing, a first and second class license and outside consumption permit. And the second is from 12 Acres, doing business as Schaefer's Market in Delhi, a first and second class license. Public safety inspections have been conducted at both premises. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to approve
the liquor license application, renewal applications for Otter Creek Brewing Company and Schaefer's Market in Delhi.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the liquor licenses signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or thumbs up. Okay. Almost need placards you can hold up or something, a green or a red. Next is an update from our state legislators, and we're going to start with Senator Bray.
Good evening, everybody. In your packet, I guess Farhad said it was item number 6. There's an outline of things I was going to go through very briefly. So I don't know if everyone has that in front of them. There are quite a few things that happened in the last 10 days. I thought it'd be easier to work from a list if you have it. Is everyone all set? Okay. So, as you know, in the Senate side, people serve on 2 committees. And so I'm really reporting out on what we've been doing in the last 12 days related to COVID-19. In mornings, I chair natural resources and energy, so there's updates on both natural resource side, the energy side. Afternoons, I'm on government operations, and there's some new laws related to things of interest, I'm sure, to the town, for instance, on elections and open meeting laws. So I'll just walk through very briefly those things, and I don't know, I know we're on a short timeline here, and I'll figure you'll flag me down if you want more information. Or I've also included in that packet of that one pager, there's a live link to the underlying legislation, the municipal law changes. So it's quite detailed. So I'm guessing that after we're done or something like that, people may want to click through and look that up so you can see the details. At any rate, so on the natural resource side, drinking water and groundwater, committee worked with EPA, USDA, Department of Environmental Conservation. And the good news basically is that our current drinking water supply systems and wastewater systems are designed to deal with viruses of all sorts. And so there's really no particular exposure related to COVID-19 that's unique to this. So I'll just move on from there. On the within solid waste, there is on the medical waste piece of solid waste. It turns out the systems we have in place are also fine for dealing with COVID-19 related medical waste. We don't anticipate any changes required there. The world of wild animals and livestock, there's really, for the most part, not animal to human transmission. So so that's good news for Addison, for people in general, but also in Addison County where we have plenty of livestock. And then on the energy side of natural resources to energy, we worked with the Public Utility Commission last week, and they issued an order. I can get you a copy, but basically it just says that for utilities, electric utilities, natural gas utilities, and telecommunications, that during the period of the emergency order that the governor issued back on the 13th, and that there'll be no disconnections. It's actually, and the utilities had already jumped in and said they wouldn't have any disconnects for people through the end of April. So there is a period of time which people don't have to worry as they're losing income, that they're also going to be unable to pay essential utility bills. Across the hall on the government operations side, we worked and actually passed a law today. Senator Hardy and I were in along with 14 other senators, so we had a legal quorum in order to pass 3 laws, one of which relates to municipal operations. So briefly on that side, in the world of elections, the overarching theme is that during this emergency, we want to protect the fundamentals of democracy, as in open meetings and fair and open, transparent elections. At the same time, we're all being told not to gather. So how do we do both? And that's what today's law is about, making those kinds of adjustments. So I'm going to, again, there's a live link to the bill where you can look at it in detail, but the first 4 sections relate to elections, and one of the first provisions, it says that you no longer have to go out and collect signatures in order to get on a ballot. And that's because the very act of being out there collecting signature means you're exposing, you're connecting with person after person. 500 people if you were to choose to run for governor, or 100 for Senate, or 30 for local elections. So we eliminate that portion of the law for now. They're all temporary to 2020, the 2020 cycles. The second provision is that the Secretary of State will come out and publish new procedures how to run elections. So for instance, it anticipates things like voting by mail. And then there are a variety of additional provisions related to things like extended period during which ballots can be counted. So as the mail comes in, You don't have to wait for election day and have things pile up. You can count as you go. There are basically 6 provisions in there now, and you can see that. There's also provisions related to being very explicitly transparent and open so that there's monitoring of these things. These are all new processes. We want to make sure that people have full confidence in the integrity of our elections. And to that point, I skipped over one important thing. The Secretary of State, who's the Chief Elections Officer, is in charge of this, promulgating these new rules, but the Secretary of State will be working in conjunction with the governor. So we wanted to make sure that we had, that people would see that this is a nonpartisan issue. We have a Democratic Secretary of State and a Republican governor working together. The next section, Section 4, relates to Australian ballot. So municipalities and school districts have provisions now that are voted by, you must vote in person. This gives municipalities and school districts the right to shift to Australian ballot without going through the normal public voted in person process, because again, we're trying to provide a mechanism not to have people to have to gather in traditional elections. So Australian things, all questions can be voted by Australian ballot. The next Section 5 is the first of 2 sections on open meeting laws. Again, so the whole thing is oriented to public health and safety, and you'll be interested to read through the provisions that are offered. So you no longer have to be physically present in order to run a legal warned public meeting. So everyone could be home dialing into this meeting, and you'd be able to have a legally warned and conducted meeting. And there are just a detail or two. So for select boards and school boards, because they are 2 of our most important boards of the many boards there are, but because people can't be physically present, we ask that if at all possible, those meetings are recorded so that if people can't be there, they'll have some way of reviewing the record after the event. And there's some provisions in there related to trying to make sure that it's easy for the public to participate, as easy as possible. Jumping ahead to Section 8 in that bill, it relates to municipal deadlines for municipal corporations. So the governor authorizes state agency to extend deadlines applicable to municipal corporations or regional planning commissions. And that applies to licenses, permits, programs, or plans. And then a second section allows municipal corporations to extend deadlines to others other than programs run by the state. So basically, we're providing you all with the opportunity not to have things lapse during this period where it's difficult to get together and conduct ordinary business. We don't want people's licenses, permits, renewals lapsing because of a lack of being able to get together. And then Section 9 deals with municipal sewer and water. It says that during the period of the emergency, there shall be no disconnects. That also addresses private water systems that are offering public drinking water. So that's the high-speed tour of what we've been working on in the last 12 days. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Chris.
A question for you, Chris, as far as the open meeting law, is providing the opportunity to submit questions via email considered adequate access for the public?
That's a good question. No matter how much you discuss this, someone always dreams up another flavor of what needs to be accommodated. I'll have to, I'll double check on that and get you a more solid answer. The general approach of the rule, as you'll see when you read through, is that we provide for as many means of participating as possible. So I would think that, but I'll verify that, that question. So your question is, can people submit questions by email? And is that during the meeting or prior to the meeting or both?
Both.
Okay.
Thinking, I just read it while you were speaking, and it speaks to having them be able to call in. I don't know if we have that capacity, especially if you're talking a number of people. I don't know if we're going to have a meeting that would have that many people interested during this crisis, because we're dealing with really just critical issues right now. But let's say that something came up, does it fit the intent of the bill to provide access so that we can have two-way discussion over an email, and we could vocalize those? I mean, we're being broadcast, and debate those. It would give them an opportunity to participate.
So I'll have to check with Legislative Council how that might be interpreted, as well as the Secretary of State. In general, the orientation was to have it still be real time, as in a telephone conference call, or a Zoom meeting like this one. So I'm not really sure I know that sometimes select boards run into trouble when they start sending group emails around, right? If you have a quorum of any board on an email, it turns into a public meeting, but the public doesn't really have much of an opportunity to witness those exchanges. So
yeah, we would have to establish.
Check on.
Let me just clarify, Chris. It would be a central email that would be going basically to the town manager, although it could be a meeting email, and the email would be read and discussed within the board and give them an opportunity. I don't know, just looking at, I don't know what the capacity, how many you can get on Zoom, but I could see us, I mean, we're already pretty well filling the screen with just the participants, say nothing about public.
Do you mind?
The other thing is, if you've received an email and you're posting it to your website, or especially if you're reading it, that would allow people who are in the meeting to hear what you're discussing as well, even if they don't have access to your original emails.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to Ruth.
Thank you, Brian. And I just want to weigh in on this because I'm looking at the language that we just passed this morning. It says the public body shall allow the public to access the meeting by telephone whenever feasible. And just to let you all know, the way we've been running our meetings, the Senate has been meeting for the past 14 days, pretty much every single day, multiple meetings a day. And for meetings, we have the ability for the public to call in and hear our meetings and listen to our meetings, but they don't get unmuted to speak during the meetings. For your public comment section, you probably would want to have people somehow contact Kathleen or whomever in advance and say, I want to make a public comment. Then they could be unmuted for 2 minutes or however long you make your public comments, and then muted again so that they have their ability to make a public comment. The other thing is that the legislation says, to the extent possible, that the board should record its meetings so people are able to listen to the recording of the meeting after the fact, and not just rely on the written minutes of the meeting. So this was an attempt to have the meetings as publicly accessible as possible, within the limits of the crisis that we're in and the technology that we have. But I know you have a good tech person, and I bet they could figure out how to do the phone access to your meetings. But I just want to pick up a little bit where Chris left off. Like I said, the Senate has been meeting for the past 14 days. Many of our committees, including Chris's committee, picked up on a bill that the House passed, which Robin or Amy could speak to a little bit, but we picked up on the bill that they passed on Friday, March 13th, which was the last day we were in the State House. And the Senate committees have been working on that bill, the government operations part of it that Chris just went over, but also a bunch of healthcare provisions in order to give our hospitals more financial and operational flexibility to meet the COVID crisis, licensing flexibility to allow licensed medical professionals from other states or to come out of retirement, flexibility to provide and be reimbursed for telemedicine, and other sort of regulatory flexibility so that our hospitals and our medical providers are best able to respond to this crisis. There were also provisions related to unemployment insurance. As you know, many workers have been laid off unexpectedly during this crisis. So we expanded access to unemployment insurance and made it so employers would not have their unemployment insurance rating affected by this crisis. A good news is that probably the one fund in our state that's really healthy right now is our unemployment insurance fund, and Robin probably can speak to this a little bit more. But we do have the capacity in our unemployment insurance fund to meet this crisis. So people who are owed unemployment insurance will be able to get those payments. And there is an online filing process now, so people can start their applications online. So if people are asking about that, that is available. We also passed a provision this morning that allows for the remote witnessing of wills. There has been an increase in the number of people who want to get their affairs in order, and the law currently requires that wills be witnessed in person. So for this emergency, we're allowing for remote witnessing that has to be done by video, so you can actually see the person, but you don't have to be in the same location, so that they can be not in the same room with their lawyer. All of these provisions, including the provisions that Chris just mentioned regarding elections and municipal government, are for the emergency, the declared COVID-19 emergency only. The only ones that extend beyond that are the telemedicine provisions, which was because the House Healthcare Committee was already working on a bill related to those. Those were sort of already in the works. So those would sunset in 2026. So the legislature would go back and look at it and see if they were working. But everything else is for the emergency only. So these are not permanent laws that we're passing right now. We're passing laws in order to best have the state have the ability to respond to this crisis. As you know, our state finances are taking a massive hit in all of this. So we're not at the point where we're able to make any kind of commitments financially beyond the unemployment insurance. I know that the towns and local private businesses, nonprofit organizations, pretty much everybody is seeing financial crisis in addition to the public health crisis. But we really need to get more information before we'll be able to figure out how we're going to be able to respond to this, both in the current fiscal year and in the next fiscal year, because with the delay in the tax deadlines from April 15th to July 15th, that has a big impact on the current fiscal year as well as the next fiscal year. And that would also have an impact on property tax revenues and our state's education fund. So we're just in the beginning stages of trying to figure out the finances of this, but we will be passing a state budget and all the other financial bills that we normally pass. It just, we need to get more information before we can make those commitments. The Senate Pro Tem said this morning that the only thing we'll be focusing on is must-pass bills related to the operations of state government and the COVID-19 crisis. So much of the legislation that we already had started the first half of the session, unfortunately, probably won't get through this session. On a local level, I've been in contact pretty much daily with all of our school districts and trying to stay on top of the child care situation because that's one of the more complicated things going on right now is the child care for essential personnel. And our school districts and our child care providers are really struggling right now to try to get that to work. And the Education Committee is trying to stay on top of what's going on with our schools in terms of the education, distance education for all of our students. ACFD is doing a great job with the distance education. They're struggling really with the child care and they're also doing a pretty good job with the food service delivery. So those are the three big things that school districts have been asked to do in their huge tasks. So any love you can give our school districts right now, they really need it. And finally, I've been sending out regular updates every 2 to 3 days with what I know and a list of resources for people on a wide variety of things, just trying to stay on top of it for my constituents. Several of you are on that list and have been receiving them. If you'd like to get them and don't, you can either sign up on my website or just email me, and I'm happy to add you to the list. They're also available on my website, but they have just a ton of resources that I collect every couple days, or information about what the government is doing and what the Senate is doing, or the legislature in general. So hopefully those are helpful for people who are getting them. So I'll just leave it at that and turn it over to Robin unless anyone has questions for me.
One quick question. You talked about the unemployment insurance, and we've read about a lot of the employers are talking about, is the legislature going to, yes. Is the
We can hardly hear you. You're
can hardly hear me? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
that's better, yeah. Thank you.
So in regards to the unemployment insurance, and the legislators have kind of inferred, and I know you're looking in a bill that would hold the employers that have to release employees harmless during this COVID-19 crisis, especially those that are shut down by government directive. Where does that bill stand?
We passed that this morning in the Senate, that holds you harmless for, or holds employers harmless for their rating, their unemployment rating. Is that what you're talking about, Brian? Yeah.
Yes.
So we passed it in the Senate. The plan is that the House will concur with that bill tomorrow, and the governor will sign it immediately.
Okay.
So that should be in effect, and it's retroactive to the declaration of the emergency. So employers should be held harmless for their rating on their unemployment. And we are looking at provisions and hoping that the federal government also comes through with provisions to help self-employed people and contractors. Right now, those people are not, they don't pay into our unemployment insurance trust, and therefore are not eligible for funding from it. So we're trying to find other measures and hoping that the federal government will help in that area, because it is federal law. We can't violate federal law. So we're trying to find other alternatives for those people, because so many people in Vermont are self-employed. And just as you probably already know, the governor issued a stay-at-home order today. It just came out late this afternoon, and so that will have a bigger impact on the businesses that are allowed to stay open and those that must close. So we're still getting, further guidance and information on that, but that will have a larger impact certainly on the business world, but hopefully also, more importantly, on the public health world, and slow the spread of this devastating virus.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Senator Hardy.
Yes, just one quick clarification. On the election law, that is for the entire year 2020. That's not just for the COVID emergency period, because the election calendar is so long and involved that the Secretary of State's office can foresee that we're going to be in this situation for at least a period of months, and rather than they need to make choices now in order to be able to fulfill their obligations this summer and this fall. So the election provisions are for the entire year 2020, not just during the emergency period.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for that clarification. That's right.
Okay, Representative Shy.
Hi, thanks for having us here tonight, and it's fun to see all your faces, even if I can't see you in person. So I'm on House Ways and Means, and this timing is great because we had our first meeting this morning. That's the good part. The bad part is the revenue forecast for the rest of this year and next year is pretty grim, and we got some numbers. They're updating it daily, and the report we got this morning was before the governor's stay safe, stay home order, which came out, as Senator Hardy said, around 5:30 this afternoon, which is going to close more businesses as of the end of day tomorrow. So that will have another impact. But just for fiscal year 20, which ends June 30th, same as you, we are looking at possible reductions in revenue of $200 to $230 million in our general fund budget. This would be a 39 to 45% reduction in general fund revenues that are normally forecasted March through June. I recognize that income taxes usually come in April, but it's still between 15 and 17% of our annual general fund budget. So we're talking about a lot of money here. The transportation fund is a possible reduction this fiscal year, $30 to $40 million. And the education fund, just in the non-property tax revenues, which is about a third of the education fund budget, is about $35 to $45 million. And those losses, particularly in the education fund, could be significantly higher in fiscal year 21. And I've been in touch a little bit with some folks on House Appropriations, which is where the budget is being built for FY21. We built the state budget based on the forecast that we have in January, when that was then, and this is now. And we won't be able to update a forecast, which we normally do in July. We will not be able to update that until possibly late August, more likely September. So it's very difficult to put together a budget when there's so much uncertainty. We don't know what the federal government's going to do to help us. They did in 2008-9. Haven't heard a lot about it this time. And tax filings and payments, now that they can be delayed to July 15th, we don't have the data on how people are doing. So we don't have a sense of that. So there's so much uncertainty. There's even question about whether we can do a full year budget, or whether we're going to pass a shorter term budget, and then once we know more, we pass the rest of the year. So none of that do we know at this point. So the federal filing charges, and as you know, for tax filings have affect Vermont. When they move theirs, we have to move ours because we do our taxes off the federal. And that means some things to the towns as well. It means the homestead declaration isn't due until July 15th, which means you can't figure out the property tax credits until you get that information. So it comes to the state by July 15th, so that's going to affect tax collection. And so that's going to be tricky. And it also makes it really difficult to set the yield for the education funding because we don't know what that is. School budgets were passed in a pre-COVID-19 world, and what would we have done if we knew now then what we know now? And then the deferral of the sales and use tax, and rooms and meals tax, they're not being abated, but they're being deferred so that 3 months worth of payments are at this point going to be due May 15th. And one of the things we talked about today in our committee is if you can't pay it now and you're closed down for 2 months, how are you going to, I see Dan nodding, how are you going to be able to pay 3 months in May? So that significantly affects revenues and affects the education finance, because 100% of the sales and use tax goes into education funding, and I can't remember, it's maybe 24% of rooms and meals goes into education funding. So we just have a lot of unknowns that way. The House is voting tomorrow. We're going to be in session. I'm still a little unclear how we're doing this, but the House Rules Committee is passing a resolution we're going to officially declare a state of emergency for the legislature. The governor, because of separation of powers, when he declares a state of emergency for the state, it doesn't include the legislature. So we have to declare our own state of emergency. And then that gives us the authority to change our rules and procedures, which is what we'll be doing so that we can vote remotely. So the Senate is small enough that it could create a quorum of people who could physically distance with 16 people. Knowing that they had consensus of the people that weren't there. It's a little harder with 150 people in the House chamber. So we're doing some other things, but we will be doing things remotely. We continue to meet online. My meeting this morning was Zoom like this, and we also had a call-in number so people could call in and listen. We're all getting very good at Zoom, and I wish I had bought stock a few years ago. So that's my update. I wish I had better news, but I thought you ought to know what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Sheldon.
Yeah, hi everybody. It's great to see you. I don't think that I have a ton to add. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I would just say that the House adjourned the 13th, March 13th, and we did send a bill over to the Senate, but we have not been meeting until this week, and the money committees have started meeting first, so my committee is not on track to meet, maybe not till the beginning of next week, though we've been in a supporting role to some of the decisions being made on the Senate side so that we have any kind of questions worked out or avoid a lot of potential conflicts. So we've been working behind the scenes some. And like Robin said, we're going to vote tomorrow for the first time, or meet tomorrow publicly. And actually, to your point of how many people can you have on a Zoom meeting, we've had Zoom meetings with almost the entire House chamber or membership on board. So you can have a lot of people. Only leadership is unmuted. So otherwise, you'd have a lot of noise and chaos potentially, but it does work really well. And I guess I'd like to hear how it's going from your perspective and what we could do to support you in my time. I yield to you all to help to tell us what you need from us.
If anybody has a question or a comment?
I just have a question for all of you, I think. Worst case scenario, like New York City shut down and they have declared they're trying to open new units at the Jacob Jiver Center in New York City, hospital units. If worst come to worst, do we have any plan in place in Vermont, especially in Middlebury?
Yes, actually. The governor's working with the National Guard to set up 3 locations for medical surgical units. And then that's statewide. I don't know what those locations are. Somebody else might. But the college, and I know this from reading the paper, right, is taking the ice off of Kenyon Arena so that it could be used for space if we needed it there. So I think people are thinking about that here as well. I think we're up to 5 or 7 cases. Maybe we're up to 7 now in Addison County. We get reports every day from the Department of Health on cases.
And Robin, the entire board gets a report from Chief, who's head of the emergency operations here.
Yeah, good. Okay.
In the community, and we're meeting regularly and discussing regularly with head leadership of the hospital and the head leadership of the college. So the community is definitely planning and prepared if the crisis gets bad in our local community.
Great.
I had a quick question. I know there was an email going around with a way for people who are in the healthcare industry to get childcare. Is that system functioning?
So
Go ahead, Ruth.
the child care situation, the state has ordered that school districts and provide child care for essential workers, which right now there's a fairly long list. I heard today that they may modify that list, but it does include frontline health workers and first responders, grocery store clerks, and people like that. There's a fairly long list. Districts have to provide it. Some of the private child care providers for birth to 5-year-olds, it's optional, whether they participate or not. In Addison County, all of the child care centers have opted out to not provide. They are basically very against this provision and will not be providing center-based child care for 0 to 5-year-olds. There are some home providers who will take a few kids, mostly kids that families they've already worked with. And then the school districts are all trying to get something up and running. Mount Abe has gotten something up and running. I believe they started today. Addison Northwest up in Virgins also did. Addison Central, ACSD has not started a program. I spoke with with the superintendent late this afternoon, and they are still trying to figure out how they will get it to work. They have been hoping to work with the Mary Johnson Children's Center, who runs their after-school program, to get them to staff it, but the Mary Johnson Children's Center will not be doing that. So the school district is trying to find volunteers on their staff to do it, and last I heard, only a couple of them had volunteered to do it. So ACSD is really struggling right now to try to figure out a way to do this. So if there are insufficient spaces, the priority spaces will go to frontline healthcare workers and first responders before anyone else on the essential workers list. So at this point, it's still a work in progress. Everything changes super quickly. But unless we have childcare providers, we can't provide childcare. So it's really kind of a challenging situation right now. A lot of the teachers are all involved in actually providing distance education to our kids or delivering meals to families. So there aren't that many staff members who aren't already engaged in something else, and there are health risks involved, as anybody who's done childcare or raised a kid knows that it's pretty hard to social distance when you change a diaper or put a baby down for a nap. So it's pretty hard to do it with social distancing. Other school districts are doing much more of a one-on-one thing, but it's a challenging situation right now.
Are there other questions from the board?
To Kathleen, the governor's Stay Home, Stay Safe executive order. So I'm mentioning that because in that there's a list of, we're talking about who's covered and who's not covered, keeps changing, essential workers being one of them. So there's a list in that executive order of who the governor's covering. And it notes that it's in flux, like many other things.
The annex, I read it before I came to the meeting tonight, Senator Bray, and the annex looks like he's adopting, in large part, the Department of Home Security's list that they're promoting from their site. So. But if you go to the website, he's put that all out. There's a full annex of everybody who's considered essential.
I do want to note that the essential business and organization list is different than the essential persons for child care list. They are two separate lists at this point, and there will not be capacity to serve all the children of essential persons or essential businesses. So. That it's just, especially in Addison County, it's not gonna work. So I've been encouraging people to find alternative solutions for childcare if they're able to, and really hoping and trying to support our districts and childcare providers with doing as much as they are able to.
It's bad enough regular basis. Okay, so I really appreciate our legislators joining us to give us an update on what they're doing in this current environment and how that impacts our community. I certainly welcome you to continue to stay on our meeting. I would imagine you're getting your fill of Zoom meetings, but you're more than welcome to stay in.
Thank you. I actually have another Zoom meeting after this I'm hopping on to. It never ends.
I expected
Zoom
that.
all the time.
It is.
You're going to be pros.
Thank you for having us, and just let us know as we can support you.
We will.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for all you're doing, you guys. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, next on the calendar is to move to Dan Warner and to talk about the Infrastructure Committee and updates and recommendations.
Okay, everybody hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. First item on the list for tonight is to award a contract for construction for Katy Road Culvert 2. This is east of Route 7, of course. We had 10 bidders submit bids for the project. The low bidder was the Bishop Excavating, local contractor. Their bid was $74,556. You should have in your packet a review of their bid by Jamie Simpson of Green Mountain Engineering, and they are requesting, or have endorsed the bid and requesting us to move forward with passing it. So first item I'm requesting you to approve is the bid for $74,556 to Bishop Excavating.
I'll make a motion to approve award of a contract to the Bishop Excavating for the replacement contract for the number 2 culvert on Katy Road for a total cost of $74,556.
Second.
Lindsay, did you second?
Farhad did.
Farhad did? Okay. The yellow box was bouncing all over my screen. Okay.
Seconds everything.
We have a motion and a
I
second.
think your screen is still on mute, Brian. You are using the mic, but your screen is on mute.
I think that's on purpose so that we don't get feedback.
Right.
As long as you can hear me through the mic.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions on the motion? Just raise your hand if there's questions. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the motion to award the contract to low bidder DeBishop Excavating for $74,556, signify with a thumbs up. Okay, and I vote yes also. Okay.
Okay, next item is requested the board to approve an amendment for Green Mountain Engineering. Part of their, actually it's not an amendment, it's just a continuation of their original proposal. This is for items 10, 11, and 12. On their proposal is for contract administration, construction oversight, and preparation of record drawings once the project is complete. That total for those services is $10,600. We
previously approved the steps 1 through 9 back in the summer of 2019. So tonight I'm asking you to approve 10 through 12.
I'll move to approve the execution of items 10 through 12 in Green Mountain Engineering's Katy Road project proposal for contract administration, construction oversight, and record drawings at a total cost of $10,600.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Victor. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor signify with a thumbs up. All right, unanimous. Okay, Dan.
Next is the Dow Pond Water Main project. Green Mountain Engineering prepared a recommendation for a low bidder of DeRoche's Construction Services. Their bid was $268,095. There was a total of 6 bidders on the project. Just as a side note, DeRoche's was the company that did the South Street improvements back in 2015. Ron is the owner of the company, very cooperative man, and does a great job. So Green Mountain, again, did a review of their bid, and you have that in your packet of recommendation from them to approve their bid. So I'm requesting the board to approve that bid of $268,095.
I'll move to award the contract for the Route 116 Dow Pond Water Main Replacement Project to DeRoche's Construction Services for a total cost of $268,095.
Second.
Moved by Heather, seconded by Victor. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify with a thumbs up. All right, we're getting good at this.
Okay. Next item is the bid award for the police department water and site improvements. This is the demolition of the tanks and the sludge digester building, and also replacing the water main that goes west from the police department parking area down to the main pump station. We received 3 bids. The low bidder was Parker Excavation. Their bid is $907.88. Otter Creek Engineering provided a recommendation after they analyzed all the bids, so I'm requesting the board to approve the bid from Parker for $265,907.88.
I'll move to award the contract for site and water line work for the Police Department Adaptive Reuse Project to Parker Excavation for a total cost of $265,907.88.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions on the motion?
Can I just make a quick comment?
Absolutely.
So this isn't the actual work to the buildings, this is just the site work in preparation for the work to the buildings, just for clarification.
This does not include the demolition of the towers?
No, it does,
Okay.
it does. Right, Dan?
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
but the work to rehab the garage and the storage building and all that is not included as part of this.
Yeah, this would really be under budget.
Yeah.
True.
So this amount was never included in that original, because we had planned to use the money left over from the settlement, the wastewater treatment facility settlement, to cover the cost of this part of the work.
Okay.
Correct.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Unanimous, Kathleen.
All right. The next item is a request to approve engineering services for Otter Creek Engineering. This is for bid and construction phase services for the Court Street Water Main project. There's a proposal in your packet. There's several segments of that included. Their total cost for these services is $126,520. Includes bidding services and construction phase and contract administration. Just before we get too far into it, we had a meeting this morning outside to clarify with some contractors our schedule. We're tentatively looking at roughly an August 17th start, and then for night construction, and then take a 2-week break near the end of September through the first week of October to Columbus Day for no night work. There might be day construction, but we try to give the Middlebury Inn area a break with noise and conflicts. So there'll be a period of a pause for night work and then continue after that. So right now I'm just requesting you to approve Otter Creek Engineering's request for the $126,520.
I'll move to approve the amendment to the engineering services agreement with Otter Creek Engineering for bid phase and construction phase services for contract 1 of the Court Street Water Main project at a total cost of $126,520.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments or questions on that motion?
Victor?
Yeah, Brian, I'd like to abstain from this one because I utilize Otter Creek Engineering for a lot of professional assistance.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Nick, what did you say?
I'm actually going to abstain, Heather, from this one because I utilize Otter Creek Engineering for a lot of my own project work.
Okay. So can I just make a quick comment?
Yes.
I know things are really uncertain right now for everyone, but if, when things calm down, if there's any way we can do some kind of public information meeting, you know, for the public about this project, when we have a firmer idea of what our construction schedule is going to be and who's going to be doing the work and all that. I know we have a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty, but just something that I would like to do and I'm happy to help with if it makes sense as we get closer to construction.
Certainly.
Dan, will we know when would you know the exact timing and flow of this project?
Well, we're looking at since the bridges will be done August 5th, I believe, and we keep hearing that they're going to be ahead of schedule on that, but we're not going to worry too much about that. It happens when it happens. So that's why we chose August 17th, no sooner than that. And Kathleen and I looked at the college schedules. They have, I think, a couple events. There's our family weekend. I think it's Columbus Day weekend. Trying to stay away from some of their events so we don't disrupt that or the inns and traffic for those leaf peeper season too. So that's why we went to the 17th. Try to get some work done before that.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify with a thumbs up. We have one abstention, 6-4, one abstain. Okay, Dan?
Okay. Next topic is the library AC system engineering proposal, or heating AC engineering proposal. Dana Hart and I have met a few times with Engineering Services of Vermont for getting to the point of this proposal for looking at the heating and air conditioning for the library. Engineering Services has submitted a proposal to us for doing the design for the heating and AC for the library. That cost is $19,200. Basically, the system is an all heat pump system for both heating and air conditioning. There would be no backup required. These heat pumps can go to provide building load down to minus 25 degrees. At one point, we had talked about doing a wood boiler or even natural gas backup, but now with the new efficiencies of heat pumps, that's gone away. So we've also presented this proposal to the Energy Committee, and they supported it also. So the goal here is to get them going on this and then have hopefully a good number by the time we get to September-ish, so we know what the costs are going to be, so we can program it into capital improvements. Whether that happens next summer or not depends on how funding goes, but that's the plan, at least to get it scheduled. It of course has to happen in the warm months because you have to have heat in the winter months. So this is a planning time. Take a look at the finances in the fall, and then see where we are come next spring, summer. So requesting the board to approve Engineering Services of Vermont's proposal for $19,200.
I'll move to approve the Isley Library Heating AC System Engineering Fee Proposal presented by Engineering Services of Vermont for a total cost of $19,200.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions?
Brian?
Nick?
Just one, Dan, and I just want to make sure we're not doing something premature. We know we need to have this work done, but then, as you're probably aware, as recently the library's board looked at their long-term plan for an upgrade of the library, which was fairly extensive, and realized that level is not likely to happen in the foreseeable future, but they do want to look at some architectural options, which could conceivably result in some reconfiguring of the building. Does this plan that is being proposed, is it adaptable so that if the geometry of the building does alter, that this thing will still work?
Well, these are, I looked at the proposal a little bit this morning again. In their proposal is, and this is all, without getting too far in design, there's 25 of these heat pump AC heating units. So at each level of the library is going to have several of these small units. They're similar in size to, I don't know if you've been down there, some of those air conditioning units that are on the walls. And basement has them, first, second floor has them. So there's going to be several of these around the building, and they will take, in unison, provide the heating and cooling for that building. If there's a new building added on, I would think they would follow the same technology, that there would be these small heating AC heat pumps, dispersed throughout the perimeter of the building to take care of that building load. So it's not like you're going to design something with these to have more, to carry more load. You would just add on additional units.
So they are reconfigurable if the geometry, say, of the lowest level changed?
I'm sorry to hear you.
So these units are reconfigurable, so if the geometry of the lower level, for example, changed?
Yeah, so for instance, on the outside of the building, there is the heat pump itself, and then the air to fin coil unit can be moved, horizontally, anywhere in the building, within reason of close proximity to the outside heat pump itself.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving the motion signify with a thumbs up. Guess we don't need to vote thumbs down. 7-4. Next, Dan.
Okay, next item is an update on the Pulp Mill Bridge protection measures. We had a conversation, we meaning Bill Kernan, Jim Gish, myself, and I had a meeting a few weeks ago with the state and VHB, the railroad crew, about traffic concerns for Pulp Mill Bridge. We will be having a state-supplied portable message board sign on Seymour Street that'll go down there near Bordeaux Brothers driveway. And then Bill Kernan has come up with a stop sign and another LED height clearance sign that would be mounted just prior to the Pulp Mill Bridge on our side. The idea is that people would have to stop and see a little flashy blinking light, and it might get their attention in case they haven't yet determined that they can't go through the bridge. So just an update of some little bit of technology to hopefully not have people run into the bridge. So no action needed from you other than we're just informing.
Sounds like a good idea, Dan.
That? Okay. Next item is the request from Bob Wells, wastewater plant superintendent. He wants to award a sole source contract to Powers Guaranteed Generators. These are for annual maintenance of the generators that he has. The contract is $4,285. It's not just for, I think in the notes here it says Seminary Street Pump Station, but it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generators that he has in his system. And so requesting you to approve that contract of Powers Guaranteed Generators.
I'll move to award a contract under the sole source purchases provision of the procurement policy to Powers Guaranteed Generators for the annual maintenance of 6 pumping station generators at a total cost of $4,285.
Okay.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor signify by thumbs up. Okay, all four. 7-4.
Next item is approval of the annual financial plan for town highways. This item and the next one, which is a certificate of certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards and network inventories, are required for receiving the state aid from the Vermont Agency of Transportation, and also for any grant applications that we submit. The board has to be on file that the board has seen these and approved them and signed off on them. And Kathleen has sheets there that you'll need to sign on after you approve them. So the first one is the annual financial plan. You'll see the top part of the form, if I think you have that in front of you, is income, and then bottom is expenses. These numbers come from, the revenues come from the calculation the state supplies us based on how many miles of each class of 1, 2, and 3 that we have. The town tax funds comes from that calculation comes from the revenues in the highway department and capital improvements. So that totals $3,075,761. Expenses at the bottom come from the budgets of winter maintenance, the non-winter maintenance part of the highway budget, and then also some capital improvements. So again, those two numbers agree. The intent of this is the state wants to know that the towns are expending at least $300 per mile for each mile of class 1, 2, and 3. Doing the math for us, we're about $46,500 per mile. It's an annual thing we have to do, and so I'm requesting the board to approve that.
I'll move to sign the annual financial plan for the town of Middlebury Highways, certifying total estimated maintenance expense for fiscal year 21 of $3,075,761.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions on that? All in favor of approving the motion signify with a thumbs up. Unanimous. Okay, Dan?
Okay. The second half of that is the town road and bridge standards. Needs an annual approval by the board. Actually, these are the same standards that were approved last year by the board. We have to provide a certificate of compliance for these standards, that we follow them. The main concern from the state is that when we build something, it's built to a certain standard, so in case there's damage from a FEMA event, that we're able to say, yes, we built it to these standards, so we get funding back from FEMA. If there's any money left after this COVID-19 process. But anyway, it's an annual certification, and again, Kathleen has a document for you to sign, so we can get that sent in. And again, this is required for future grant applications. So requesting the board to approve that compliance.
I move to sign the certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards and network inventory.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on that? All in favor of the motion signify with a thumbs up. Unanimous. Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you very much, and stay healthy, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
You
You too, Dan. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Dan.
Good night. Good night. Yep, welcome. Bye-bye. Good night, Dan. Good night.
Just reading somebody's comment in the chat. The Brady Bunch.
So, see, that just crossed my mind.
I'm really excited. I know now what it looks like to viewers when the lights go out.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we're realizing, the three of us here, how much the rest of you move about when you're here. Because
Okay, so next.
You won't have to worry about it.
So next on our agenda is a consideration of extension of all appointments to committees, boards, and commissions by 90 days. Typically in March, the town advertises for individuals interested in seeking appointments to open positions on town committees, boards, and commissions. And Kathleen pointed out that in light of the significant and ongoing impacts of the coronavirus pandemic, the board would be challenged to solicit and meet with and discuss potential future appointments, and was wondering if the board would be amenable to extending all current appointments by 90 days. This would provide continuity on the town's public panels during this time of uncertainty, and assuming the restrictions currently in place have been lifted by the end of that time, would allow individuals interested in seeking appointment to present themselves to the board in person. Thoughts on the board?
Makes sense. Let's do it.
If the board is amenable to it, I would seek a motion.
I'll move to extend all current appointments to the town committees, boards, and commissions by 90 days, subject to further reevaluation as needed based on state and federal coronavirus guidance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments on it? Hearing none. All in favor of extending our existing appointments by 90 days, signify with a thumbs up. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Next is approval of check warrants. Lindsay, have you got the info there?
I don't.
It's for hot.
Oh, Farhad has it.
I'll make a motion to approve total expenditures in the amount of $449,000, $449,174.64, consisting of $335,726.47 for accounts payable and $113,448.17 for payroll for the period of March 11, 2020 through March 24, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the check warrants, signify with the thumbs up. Okay, unanimous. I gotta get my computer plugged in or I'm gonna be offline here shortly.
Okay, so I will move right into the town manager's report with that prompt. In your packet and available online is the Bridge and Rail Project 2020 schedule update, a nice PowerPoint presentation done by Jim Gish for you. We also have the February year-to-date FY20 budget results for all of the funds. And as of the end of February, we were well on track, consistent with last year's performance. But as Robin mentioned, that budget forecasting will look pretty grim, given that in tragically bad timing, our tax due date was March 16th. So we'll see how that affects our property tax receipts. Stay tuned for that. And then, as you know, our budget is relying heavily on the local option tax for capital improvements and such, so we'll be watching that closely. And that's all I have.
Questions of Kathleen?
Yes, Kathleen. You received, in fact, several received that email from Holmes this week. Any follow-up to that or any more information? I thought you made a great reply, but I was just curious. It seems like there is a desire from the public to hear more about the entire summer's efforts and current situation. Any suggestions? Are you going to be doing any different, or is there any more information to give them or any help?
So maybe I should read my reply for the folks at home, and then I could follow up on that. Earlier this week, Holmes Jacobs wrote to members of the town and the legislature and Jim Gish and several others, asking what the town is doing, looking ahead at the effect that this crisis will have on all of our downtown businesses. And I replied as follows: Dear Holmes, thanks for reaching out to call for local and state leaders to work together to develop a strategy to assist and support businesses, our community, as we face the unprecedented challenges that lie ahead. We absolutely share your concern, and we are determined, as everyone else is, to do all that we can to support each other as a community, as we always have. That said, as the scale of the current global crisis far outstrips the capacity of the town's local resources to bring relief, we, like all Vermont municipalities, will be looking to leverage state and federal financial aid when it becomes available for maximum advantage to our community. Accordingly, we are eagerly awaiting passage of the federal stimulus package and will be convening a meeting soon with local economic development officials from the Addison County Economic Development Corporation, the Better Middlebury Partnership, and the Addison County Chamber of Commerce, and Middlebury College to discuss developing a coordinated and efficient approach. So as a follow-up to that, as noted, we will be looking to the federal government first to see how that aid cascades down to the state government and how we could package that to the greatest effect. And also to note that we have been meeting regularly with the college via Zoom, Brian Carpenter and I, as well as Chief Hanley, and we will be bringing up this topic tomorrow just to tee it up so that we'll be poised to move as soon as we hear more.
Thank you.
Heather.
I think it's a little too early in this whole crisis to make any kind of commitment or promise or anything other than what Kathleen said, and that we're committed to doing what we can when we know more. I think what we have to remember is this is affecting every single business, person, everyone. It's not just downtown businesses. It's not just the restaurant industry. It's everyone. And I don't know how we'll be able to help everyone, but people are just going to have to sit tight until we have more information. And I hope that people realize that, you know, we as a group will do everything we possibly can when we know what we can do. So.
Yeah, and I certainly understand that. And my point was being maybe they seem to be requesting information or communications with us, not necessarily for solutions. It's a part of a conversation, and and some of them I know there's a big trickle down effect, and some of the businesses in town got hit immediately by it, and I've been texting with them with a bunch of restaurants all week, and I've seen their concern and their despair, and the only thing I was suggesting about is communicating. That's it.
Thank you. Perhaps I'll put a reconfigured similar response out on to the email list with another COVID update.
Thank you.
And one of the things that we certainly can do is to cascade information as it becomes available. Once it's, how it would impact the businesses within our local community, because there's sometimes a lot of fine print in the passage of some of these bills, and maybe we can help by being a resource to help our local businesses weed through everything. So Okay. That takes us to board member concerns. And I guess everybody's screen is a little different in organization because they're different order on mine. But in mine, I've got Dan in the top left. Go ahead, Dan.
I think I've spoken what I needed to say, so I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Victor?
I have many concerns, but I wish you all long life and good health.
That's quite a library you have there, Victor. You're at home, right?
Pardon?
Are you at home?
Yes,
That's quite a personal library you have.
that's only part of it.
Nice.
You know, I bought Victor's old house here, and I can't tell you how many bookcases are built into the walls in this house. Victor, we actually took down a few of them, but there's still plenty left.
I love it. Farhad?
We have some trying times ahead of us, and everybody's going to go through a tough time before we get better. I'm very thankful that I live in this community, which is so supporting. I'm from India, and as we speak, India is under a complete police lockdown. It's a curfew situation in the entire country with shoot-at-sight orders. It's so bad over there. So I find lucky that our community is, our government is much more supporting than governments over there. I hope everybody stays healthy and safe, and hopefully we'll come out on the other side pretty soon.
Thank you, Farhad. Lindsay?
Lindsay?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've been heartened by how much the community has come together already. For everybody who is contacting us, please know that we hear you and we're working really hard and doing our best. And I'm sure that applies to several layers of community support. So, and I don't know if anyone saw the USA Strong sign on Route 7 that somebody had tacked up.
Yeah.
But, and a Go Truckers sign, which I appreciated too. I think a lot of people there are a lot of people out there, like grocery clerks, who didn't really understand how vital their jobs are to our community and are now just seeing how important they are. So just thank you, everybody, for all your hard work.
Thank you. Heather?
I just had a suggestion that we take a look at using Google Docs to do signatures on forms that we all need to sign. Maybe Kathleen's already ahead of my suggestion in taking a look at that, but I know I don't know how legally binding they can be, but I think there's a way for everybody to, enter their on documents in Google Docs. So the other thing is, are we still continuing to review warrants in person because we can social distance with that process? Is that still happening, or have we changed that?
Farhad was in today to review the warrants.
Okay.
I'm on next, the two next ones I'm on, so I'm comfortable either way.
Okay. And then the other thing I just wanted to say quickly is a huge shout out to Kathleen, who I think is doing a fantastic job in a crisis situation where obviously you can never be trained for. So thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate all you've done and everything you're doing to keep us up to date. And great job, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Nick?
Yesterday we had public safety meeting. The focus was the upcoming bridge project and how the different emergency services will interact with the contractor and respond. But it started off with, and say that professionally I've been involved with emergency service organizations for 35 plus years, and what's always interesting with me is how much they prepare for the what if and how they train for the what if. And this is the time when it shows how good that comes through. There's anxiety in the community about this national emergency we have, but I think everybody can rest assured that our emergency responders are as good as they are. They're top-notch professionals in fire, in EMS, in police. They're constantly monitoring situations. They're constantly adapting as needed. So they're going to be there if we need them. We need to always do what we can to make sure they stay healthy as well, because they are front line. So we're in a good position here, and I think we're very fortunate. I know we're very fortunate. Secondarily is the word that came out, and it was very clear, is the construction project is on. This is a top priority for VTrans. This is maybe the top project priority in place. There's been some questions as to whether it would be wise to stop, and the answer is no, it wouldn't be. The materials are coming in, the precast sections are on their way. It's not easy to turn such a massive project around, and I wouldn't want to stop it now given the budget uncertainty. We want to get this thing finished, and so it is on course to start. It's actually already has started with a lot of the work, and the bridge closure and shutdown is as planned. And Kubricki and VTrans and VHB and everybody involved with it is doing top-notch planning so that they can hopefully even expedite the project a little bit along. The big unknown, of course, is how this virus may affect the construction workers and the suppliers, but at this point, everybody is confident and we're ready to launch. So here comes the big show.
Thank you, everyone. I guess I would like to just speak to, if we have an audience watching, and just let everybody out there know that your community is still being led. We're still meeting as a board. We're using technology. We're being responsible. The community is planning for medical first. The biggest threat has been the health of our citizenship, and so the focus has been on medical preparedness in the community, and I feel good that the community is doing all that it can to prepare and be ready for the needs of our citizens. Secondly, will be a focus on the economy, and we will be working to solicit and get as much support for our community as we can get to get people back on their feet. Right now, thankfully the legislators are working to approve changes in the unemployment compensation so that more people can qualify and people can still take care of their families. But we need the businesses to fuel the economy in our local region coming out of this. And believe me, many of us are business people that are on this board, and we recognize that, and we'll be working towards that end. So don't feel that we're blind to that, please. We have need for an executive session. I'm not sure how this is going to work on this. I think we can probably lead into executive session and then just cut the open feed, but stay on Zoom. Heather, you usually help take us into that. Can you do that?
Yep, sure. In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of legal matters would clearly place the Select Board at a substantial disadvantage because the Select Board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the legal matters in public.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, thumbs up. Okay.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss legal matters under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
All in favor, thumbs up. Okay. We're moving into executive session at 8:35. Stand by while we